Welcome to Think in English. Today, the topic is making simple decisions. Listen to this easy English conversation and relax. Most people don't think about it very much, but we make a surprising number of decisions every day, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. We're constantly making choices.
And most of those choices aren't big life decisions. We're usually deciding things like what to wear, what to eat, or what to do after work.
Because those choices seem so ordinary, we often don't pay much attention to them. But when you stop and think about it, there are a lot of decisions packed into one normal day.
I notice that every morning, before I even leave the house, I've already decided what time to get up, what to wear, and what to have for breakfast.
Same here. None of those choices feels very important on its own, but together they can shape the whole day.
That's actually what makes them interesting. Small decisions can affect how we feel, even if we don't notice it right away.
And sometimes the effect is surprisingly simple. If you wear comfortable clothes, you usually feel more relaxed during the day.
I definitely notice that too. If I'm uncomfortable, I end up thinking about it much more than I should. The same thing happens with food.
For example, a healthy lunch can give you more energy later, while a heavy meal might make you feel tired.
Even small choices can make a difference. The problem is that making decisions isn't always easy, even when the decision itself seems simple.
Especially when there are too many options. You stand in front of a full closet and suddenly have no idea what to wear.
Or you open a food delivery app and spend 10 minutes scrolling through different meals. Then you end up ordering the same thing you usually order anyway.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. We spend a lot of time trying to make the perfect choice.
And most of the time, a good choice is already good enough. Once we've made a decision, it's usually better to move on.
That's something we'll come back to later in this episode. We'll look at some of the choices people make every day and why they matter more than we sometimes realize.
Because even small, ordinary decisions can tell us something about the way we live.
And maybe by the end of today's episode, they'll feel a little more interesting than before.
Let's start with one of the first decisions most people make every morning: what to wear.
One of the first decisions many people make in the morning is choosing what to wear. It sounds simple, but sometimes it takes longer than expected.
Especially when the weather is hard to predict. You look outside and think, is it going to stay like this all day? It might feel cool in the morning, but much warmer later, so you start wondering, do I need a jacket or not?
I think most people have had days when they chose the wrong clothes.
I still remember wearing a thick sweater on a day that turned out to be really hot.
Oh no, and then you spend the whole day wishing you'd worn something lighter.
After that, you always check the weather first.
Weather is one thing, but comfort matters too. Sometimes something looks nice, but it's just not that comfortable.
Same here. If I know I have a busy day, I usually pick clothes that let me move easily. When I feel comfortable, it's easier to focus on other things.
And sometimes you don't really think about it until the day starts and you realize how you feel.
When I wear something I actually like, I feel a little more confident.
Not because other people notice it,
but because I notice it.
A simple choice can sometimes help you start the day in a better mood.
Of course, there are mornings when you just don't want to spend much time deciding. Maybe you're tired or running a little late.
On those days, it's nice to keep things simple.
I actually started preparing my clothes the night before last year, and it really does help.
You wake up, and it's already done. One less thing to think about.
And somehow the morning feels a little calmer because of it.
Choosing what to wear might seem like a very small decision.
But it's one of the first ways we get ourselves ready for the day.
And after that, another daily decision is usually waiting.
The question almost everyone asks every single morning: what should I eat? After getting dressed, many people face another daily decision: breakfast. It sounds simple, but sometimes it's the first real question of the day.
What should I eat?
Some mornings, the answer comes fast. Maybe you always have the same thing: a bowl of cereal, some toast, and a piece of fruit.
When you have a routine, the decision is easy.
But not everyone wants to eat the same thing every day. Sometimes you want something different.
You open the fridge and start looking around. You see a few options. but nothing really feels right.
And somehow a decision that should take 1 minute ends up taking 5.
I think we've all had mornings like that. Especially when you're already hungry but still not sure what you want.
It's such a strange feeling. You know you need to eat, but you keep going back and forth.
For me, hunger usually helps me decide faster.
Wait, really?
Yeah, once I'm hungry enough, almost everything starts looking good.
I'm not really like that, actually.
So what do you do?
I usually think about how busy my day is going to be. If I know I have a long morning ahead, I try to pick something that'll keep me full longer.
That makes sense. I do something similar. I try not to overthink having the perfect breakfast.
Just something that gives you energy?
Good enough is usually good enough.
I like that because sometimes we make simple decisions much harder than they need to be.
Especially when there are too many choices.
And honestly, once we've started eating, we usually stop thinking about it anyway.
The decision always feels bigger before we make it. Then a few minutes later, we're already thinking about something else.
Sometimes you just pick something and move on. And that's fine.
And after breakfast, another everyday choice is usually waiting.
How should we spend our free time?
After work, school, or other responsibilities, many people finally have some free time.
And then another decision appears. What should I do now? It sounds like a nice problem to have. But having free time doesn't always make the choice easy.
Not at all. Some days you have a lot of ideas. Maybe you want to watch a movie, read a book, go for a walk, or call a friend, all at the same time.
And suddenly you have more options than time. It's hard to pick just one thing.
I think the answer usually depends on how we feel.
I agree. After a busy day, I mostly want something relaxing. I don't always want to do something exciting or active.
Same here. Sometimes just sitting quietly for a few minutes feels perfect.
Or listening to music and doing nothing else. I enjoy that too because it helps me slow down a little.
But other days are different. Sometimes you've been indoors all day, and you just want to move.
And then going outside sounds much better than staying home. Even a short walk can really change how you feel.
I always notice that, even when I don't feel like going out at first.
But after the walk, you're glad you went?
Almost every time, which is a little surprising. Honestly.
I think that happens to a lot of people. What we want at first isn't always what we actually need.
That's true. Sometimes I choose the easy option. And sometimes I choose the helpful one.
I like that way of thinking about it.
Of course, not every free evening needs a plan.
Agreed. Some of my best evenings are very simple.
Just staying home and being comfortable?
A cup of tea, a quiet room. That's sometimes all I need.
That does sound really nice.
I think the important thing is choosing something that feels right for you that day. Free time isn't about doing as many things as possible.
It's about enjoying the time you have.
And sometimes that starts with just one small decision. Things get more interesting, though, when other people are part of the decision.
Yes, choosing with someone else is a whole different experience. Choosing something for yourself can be pretty simple, but when another person joins the decision, things get a little more complicated, especially when you're trying to decide where to eat.
That happens to me all the time. A friend asks, "Where do you want to go?" And suddenly I have no idea.
I know exactly what you mean.
And the funny thing is, I can be genuinely hungry and still not know what I want.
Then the other person says, "I don't mind, you choose."
Which somehow makes it even harder.
It really does. I think it's because we want everyone to be happy.
Exactly. You don't want to pick somewhere the other person doesn't like, so you start thinking about what they enjoy.
And then they start thinking about what you enjoy.
And somehow nobody makes a decision.
I've definitely been in conversations like that.
Me too. 5 minutes later, we're still standing there talking about food instead of actually eating.
Which is its own kind of problem.
The easiest thing I've found is to just suggest one place and see what happens.
And does that work?
Usually, if the other person doesn't like it, they suggest something else right away.
That's actually a good point. Making a suggestion is much easier than asking an open question.
And once people start sharing ideas, the decision gets a lot easier.
Of course, sometimes people have really different preferences. Maybe one person wants something light, and the other wants a big meal.
Or one person wants to try somewhere new, and the other just wants something familiar.
In those situations, a little flexibility goes a long way.
Not every meal has to be exactly what you wanted.
Sometimes you're just happy to spend time with the other person.
And when the conversation is good, the restaurant matters a little less. I really like that way of thinking.
Me too. It takes some pressure off.
Choosing where to eat might seem like a small thing, but it's a good example of how decisions change when other people are involved.
And speaking of making plans with others,
let's talk about another decision many people face every week: what to do on the weekend.
Choosing where to eat is one thing, but planning a weekend can feel a little bigger.
There are usually more options and a lot more time to fill.
By the end of the week, a lot of people start thinking about what they want to do. Some people plan early, while others wait until the weekend actually arrives.
I'm somewhere in the middle. I usually have a few ideas, but I don't plan every detail.
That sounds like a good balance. Is it easier that way?
I think so. If I plan too much, the weekend starts to feel like work, especially after a busy week.
I know what you mean. A full schedule can be just as tiring as the week itself.
Exactly. So what kind of things do you usually like to do?
It really depends on the week. Sometimes I want to go out. Sometimes I just want to stay home.
Same here. Some weekends I want to visit somewhere new or meet friends I haven't seen in a while.
And other weekends?
Honestly, doing very little feels surprisingly nice.
I had one of those recently. Actually, I thought I needed some kind of exciting plan, but I ended up staying home, reading, and going for a long walk.
And did you enjoy it?
More than I expected. I think we sometimes feel like every weekend needs to be special.
But a quiet weekend can be exactly what we need. Not every free day has to be busy.
Another thing that affects plans is the weather.
Oh, definitely. A rainy Saturday and a sunny Saturday can lead to completely different decisions.
One forecast can change the whole plan. And honestly, that's okay.
I think being flexible makes weekends less stressful. If something changes, you can usually find another way to enjoy the day.
In the end, the best plan is usually the one that fits how you feel at that moment.
And sometimes that means changing your mind at the last minute.
Which brings us to another common situation. What happens when someone invites you to do something, and you're not quite sure if you should say yes? So, someone sends you a message and asks if you want to join them for something.
Maybe dinner, a movie, a birthday party, or just a casual meetup.
Sometimes the answer is easy. If you're free and it sounds fun, you say yes right away.
But not every invitation is that simple.
No, sometimes you want to go, but you're also tired, or you had a busy week and were really looking forward to some quiet time.
I run into that situation pretty often, actually.
Me too. Part of me wants to see my friends, but another part just wants a calm evening at home.
And then you start thinking it through. If I go, I'll probably have a good time. But if I stay home, I'll actually get some rest.
Exactly, and neither option feels wrong. I think that's what makes it hard.
Do you usually decide quickly?
Not always. If I answer right away, I might choose based on how I feel in that moment. And that feeling can change.
Giving yourself a little time helps. I do that too.
I've also noticed something else. There have been evenings when I really didn't feel like going anywhere. But I went anyway.
And
I was really glad I went.
I've had that too, but the opposite can happen as well.
What do you mean?
Sometimes you're just exhausted, and staying home is actually the better choice. We don't always have to say yes.
I think a lot of people forget that, especially when they don't want to disappoint someone.
But good friends usually understand. Most people would rather hear an honest answer than a forced one.
And saying no politely doesn't mean you don't care. It just means you're doing what's right for you.
In the end, every invitation is really asking one question.
What do I need most right now?
Sometimes the answer is a fun evening with other people.
And sometimes it's a quiet evening at home.
Both can be the right choice.
The important thing is that once you decide, you can actually enjoy it.
Speaking of decisions that involve enjoyment,
Let's talk about something that sounds easy but somehow takes much longer than expected.
choosing a movie or a show.
So, you sit down, finally ready to relax, and then you spend the next 20 minutes looking for something to watch.
Sometimes even longer, which is strange, because we have more choices than ever. And somehow that doesn't make it easier.
You open a streaming app and immediately see hundreds of options.
At first, that feels exciting, but after a few minutes, everything starts looking kind of the same.
You read one description, then another, and every time you think you found something, you wonder if there's something even better.
That's usually when the scrolling starts. And once it starts, it's surprisingly hard to stop.
I've had evenings where I spent so long searching that I actually felt less excited about watching anything.
I've done that too. At some point, choosing becomes more tiring than the movie itself.
Which is a little ridiculous when you think about it.
And things get more complicated when you're watching with someone else.
Oh, definitely. Now you're not just thinking about what you want. You're also thinking about what they might enjoy.
And sometimes both people are trying to be polite. So it sounds like, I'm okay with anything.
And then 5 minutes later, nobody has chosen anything.
I've been in that situation so many times.
Me too. That's actually why I started doing something different.
What do you do?
I give myself a few minutes to look. After that, I just pick something and press play.
Really? That sounds almost too simple.
It kind of is, but it saves a lot of time.
And does it work?
Most of the time, yes. And honestly, the movie usually ends up being perfectly fine.
I think that's the part people forget. We're often looking for the perfect movie when really we're just looking for a nice evening.
Exactly. And once it starts, we stop thinking about all the other options anyway.
The decision feels important before we make it. After that, we're just watching.
And that happens with a lot of everyday decisions. Actually.
Like deciding which task to start first.
Exactly. Let's talk about that next. Sometimes the hardest part of a task isn't doing it.
It's figuring out where to start.
I think that's true for a lot of people. You look at your list and see 5 different things that all need attention.
Maybe it's work, studying, cleaning, messages, and errands, all at the same time.
And somehow everything feels equally important.
That's when I sometimes end up doing nothing for a few minutes. You want to be productive, but you're still trying to find the right thing to do first.
Exactly. And the longer you think about it, the harder it gets.
I usually look for whatever feels most urgent. If something has to be done soon, I'd rather just get it out of the way.
That makes sense. I do something a little different, though.
Sometimes I start with the easiest task.
I actually try to avoid that because I'm worried I'll spend all my time on the easy things and keep pushing the difficult ones back.
That's fair. What do you like about starting with something easy?
It helps me build momentum. If I finish something quickly, I feel more motivated to keep going.
I can see how that would work. Actually,
It doesn't always work, of course. Some days, I still avoid the difficult task anyway.
I think everyone does that sometimes.
Probably, it's hard not to.
One thing I've noticed is that I often spend more time thinking about a task than actually doing it.
That's happened to me more times than I'd like to admit.
Sometimes a task looks really difficult in my head, but when I finally start, it's much easier than I expected.
I had that exact experience last week. There was something I kept putting off for days. And when I finally sat down to do it, I finished it in less than 30 minutes.
That's always such a surprising feeling.
It is. The worry lasted longer than the task itself.
That's why I try not to wait for the perfect moment anymore. I just pick one task and begin. It might not be the perfect choice, but at least I'm moving.
I like that. A small step is usually better than no step at all.
And once you've started, it's usually easier to keep going. The first few minutes seem to be the hardest part.
After that, things feel a lot more manageable.
Sometimes all it takes is one small decision to get things moving.
Speaking of which, there's another decision that comes up all the time once you've started working.
Should I keep going, or should I take a break? Once you've started working on something, another decision often appears. Should I keep going, or take a break?
I ask myself that question a lot. Sometimes I look at the clock and realize I've been sitting in the same spot for hours.
That happens to me more often than I'd like. The tricky part is knowing when a break is actually helpful and when you're just trying to avoid the task.
Exactly. Sometimes you're genuinely tired and need to rest. But other times you're just looking for an excuse to put the work off a little longer.
I've definitely done that, but I've noticed that a real break usually helps me come back with more energy.
Whereas avoiding the task doesn't really make it easier.
No, it's still waiting for you when you get back.
I've noticed that my best breaks are usually very simple: getting a glass of water, stretching a little, or walking around for a few minutes.
My version of a break used to be checking social media or watching a video.
And did that actually help?
Sometimes, but sometimes 10 minutes turned into 30. And I'd come back feeling even less focused than before.
I know that feeling. That's why I try to keep my breaks short.
Do you ever set a timer?
Sometimes, not always, but it helps when I know I'm easily distracted.
I should probably do that more often. Honestly.
One thing I've learned is that taking a break doesn't mean you're being lazy.
That took me a while to actually believe. I used to feel guilty every time I stepped away from work.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
But when I stopped taking breaks altogether, I actually became less focused over time.
Especially after concentrating for a long stretch.
Exactly. I usually do better work after a short break.
I'm not always like that. Actually, sometimes, if I stop, it's hard for me to start again.
That's interesting. I'm kind of the opposite.
Maybe that's why no one rule works for everyone.
Probably. The important thing is figuring out what works for you.
Some people need more breaks. Some people need fewer.
But sooner or later, everyone has to decide when to pause and when to keep going.
And sometimes that decision is easier than the next one.
What happens when you're trying to decide whether you really need to buy something? So, even when you're thinking about buying something, there's usually another question underneath. Do I actually need this? Or do I just want it?
That's where a lot of small decisions get surprisingly difficult. Because the answer isn't always obvious.
Some things we clearly need, like food, basic clothes, or something we use every day.
But other things just look nice or seem really useful in the moment.
That's usually where I start overthinking.
Me too, especially when I'm shopping online. Everything looks useful when you're scrolling through pictures.
And sometimes you start imagining how much better things will be once you have it.
Then a day later, you've completely forgotten about it. Which is probably a sign you didn't actually need it.
Do you tend to buy things quickly?
Not really. I usually leave things in my cart for a day or two.
And does that help?
Most of the time, yes. There have been plenty of things that felt really important in the moment but didn't feel important at all the next day.
I do something similar. If I still want something after a few days, there's a much better chance I'll actually use it.
Have you ever bought something and then wondered why you wanted it so much?
More than once. Honestly, I can't even remember some of them anymore.
That's probably the best example possible. If you can't remember it now, it probably wasn't that important.
One question I try to ask myself is, will I actually use this next week?
It's a good question.
It helps me separate things I genuinely need from things that just look interesting.
For me, it also depends on the item. If it's something I know I'll use often, I don't spend much time deciding.
But if you're not sure?
Then I'll wait a little longer before buying.
That sounds reasonable, and it sometimes saves money too.
I think that's why these small decisions are interesting. They're usually not just about the money, they're about understanding what we actually need.
And most of the time, there's no perfect answer.
Sometimes waiting is the right choice.
And sometimes just deciding and moving on is the right choice.
Either way, you learn something about your own habits.
And that becomes useful when you face a different kind of decision. Like what happens when you're thinking about trying something new?
What happens when you're thinking about trying something new?
That's an interesting one because you never really know how it's going to turn out.
It could be a new hobby, a new food, or a new place to visit.
And sometimes the idea sounds exciting at first.
But then the doubts start. You wonder, will I enjoy this? Or, what if it's a waste of time?
I think that's one reason people often stick with what feels familiar. It's comfortable, and you already know what to expect.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we miss out on something interesting just because we're a little nervous about trying something different.
That's definitely happened to me. There have been things I wanted to try for months before I actually did. Usually, because I kept telling myself I'd do it later.
And then when you finally try it?
I usually wonder why I waited so long.
I've had that experience with food. Sometimes I look at something unfamiliar on a menu and just order something I already know.
Then a friend orders it, and it turns out to be delicious.
Exactly. That's why I think trying something new always feels riskier before we actually do it.
In our heads, it seems like a big deal, but usually it isn't.
Most of the time, the worst thing that happens is we don't enjoy it that much.
And then at least we know.
One thing I've noticed is that I rarely regret giving something a try.
I'm not always like that. Sometimes I try something new and immediately think, yeah, that wasn't for me.
But you're still glad you tried it?
I think so. The important thing isn't whether it was perfect. It's whether I was willing to give it a chance.
Even if it's something small, like a new food or a new place.
And often the hardest part isn't the experience itself. It's time to begin.
A few months ago, I tried a new hobby I'd been thinking about for a long time. And I enjoyed it much more than I expected.
That's always a nice surprise. Sometimes we spend more time worrying about something than actually doing it.
And then we realize it wasn't as difficult as we imagined.
Because sometimes one small decision leads to something better than you expected.
Have you ever made a decision and then changed your mind later?
Definitely. More times than I can count.
I think a lot of people feel bad about changing their minds because it feels like they should stick with their first decision.
But that's not always the best idea. Sometimes new information comes along, or you realize there's a better option.
And then changing your mind actually makes sense.
I remember planning a picnic with some friends once.
What happened?
The weather forecast changed the day before.
Let me guess. Rain?
Lots of rain.
So you changed the plan?
We did. We decided to meet indoors instead.
That sounds like the smart choice.
It was, and everyone still had a good time. Changing the plan didn't ruin the day.
Sometimes it just means the situation changed.
Exactly. I've also changed my mind about smaller things, like choosing a restaurant.
I've done that too. I'll decide on one place. And then someone suggests another option that sounds better.
And suddenly the decision changes. It happens more often than people think.
I used to think changing my mind made me look indecisive.
Really?
Yeah, but now I see it differently. If there's a better choice, why not choose it?
I like that way of thinking.
Of course, changing your mind every 5 minutes can be a problem.
That's true. At some point, you have to make a decision and stick with it.
But being flexible is important too.
Life doesn't always go according to plan.
And sometimes the best decision is adjusting the plan.
Instead of forcing the original one to work.
Because changing your mind isn't always a mistake.
Sometimes it's just part of making a good decision.
And when we're not sure what to do, there's another option.
We can always ask someone for advice. Sometimes a decision feels easy, but sometimes you're really not sure what to do.
And that's usually when asking for advice can help. Talking to someone else often helps me see things more clearly, even if they don't actually give me the answer.
I've noticed that too. Sometimes just talking about a decision out loud helps. Who do you usually ask for advice?
It depends on the situation. If it's something personal, I'll usually talk to a close friend or a family member.
That makes sense. If it's about work or learning something new, I usually look for someone with more experience.
Do you always follow the advice you get?
Not always. I like hearing different opinions, but I still make the final decision myself.
I think that's important because other people can give suggestions, but they're not living your life.
Exactly. They might see things differently from you. And sometimes two people can give completely different advice.
That can be confusing. But it also reminds me that there's often more than one good option.
I like that way of thinking. It takes some pressure off because I don't always have to find the perfect answer.
Just a reasonable one.
One thing I've learned is that asking for advice doesn't mean you're weak.
Not at all. Sometimes we spend so much time thinking about a decision that we stop seeing it clearly.
And that's when another perspective can help. A fresh opinion can help you notice something you missed, or make you feel more confident about a choice you already wanted to make.
That's definitely happened to me before.
Me too. Sometimes I already know what I want to do. I just need someone to help me see it more clearly.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
In the end, advice is a tool. It can help us understand our options better.
But the decision still belongs to us.
And once we make that decision, there's one more thing we can do.
What's that?
Let it go and move forward.
That sounds like a great place to finish today's discussion. We've talked about a lot of different decisions today: food, money, free time, plans. And even though they were all different, I noticed something interesting.
What's that?
A lot of the difficult moments happened before the decision, not after it.
I think that's true. We spend time comparing options, imagining different outcomes, and going back and forth, sometimes again and again over the same two choices.
I've definitely done that.
Me too. It can be genuinely exhausting, especially when the decision isn't even that important.
That's the funny part.
Sometimes I spend more time choosing a movie than actually watching it.
We literally talked about that already.
And I still do it. That's the thing.
So it's not just a theory, it's something we actually keep doing.
Unfortunately, yeah.
One thing I'm really trying to get better at is making a decision and then just moving on.
That sounds simple, but it isn't always easy. I think a lot of us are afraid of making the wrong choice.
Sometimes, especially with small decisions, there are so many possible answers that we keep looking for the perfect one.
But most of the time, there probably isn't a perfect answer.
There are usually just several good options.
And once we choose one, we can focus on enjoying it or learning from it.
I like that way of thinking. It takes some pressure away.
Have you ever made a decision that felt really difficult at the time but turned out fine?
Honestly, most of them. I can remember worrying about decisions that seem completely unimportant now.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
It's probably a good reminder not to be too hard on ourselves.
We won't always make the perfect choice.
But we can make a reasonable choice and keep moving forward.
And maybe that's enough.
I think it usually is.
After all, life is full of decisions.
And fortunately, most of them don't have to be perfect.
They just have to be made.
Thank you for listening to Think in English. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. See you in the next video.